Well, good afternoon, everybody. I want to be respectful of your time, and it is 1:30. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Vicki Thompson, and I'm the project manager for the Greater Oh-Penn Manufacturing Apprenticeship Network Grant. And today we're having our webinar for Employer Series session number 4, Apprentice Selection Assessments and Other Ways to Choose Apprentices. Who's going to go ahead and do roll call for those who said that they would be attending, and then if anybody is not called that is on the call, please let us know so we can make sure we add you to the record for attendance. Sue, can you do roll call, please?
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm showing that we have Ryan Engelhart from Brilex, Marianne Collette from Brilex, Ed Lurch from Red Dog, Kyle Corrali, Corrali Tool and Die, Mary Gray from DUTEC, and let's see, is that it? Is there anyone else on the line that I did not call?
Hello, this is Lynn Leach for McDonald's Still.
Hi, Lynn. Thanks for calling in. Anyone else? Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. So this is our agenda for today. First, we'll go over the purpose for the webinars for the employers, and then I'll talk to you about apprentice selection, go through the standards of apprenticeship that we utilize for group sponsor model as an example. I'll also talk about some of the assessments that are utilized for apprentice selection. Then we'll have an opportunity for everybody to share what it is that they do to choose their apprentices or to share the assessments that they're utilizing to do such. We'll do a question and answer, and then we'll talk about the August webinar topic. The purpose for the webinars for employers is to keep an open lines of communication. All of you are participating in the grant, and therefore you have apprentices, and we want to make sure that we keep the lines of communication open. We are in the 4th year of this 5-year grant. We're learning from one another as we move along with this apprenticeship grant, and because we have the group-sponsored apprenticeship models that are competency-based, we've had an opportunity to learn and grow with one another. Not only with that, but with other topics as well as we've gone through these webinars. So we have an opportunity to share best practices, and hopefully we'll be able to do that today so we can share with one another. And then it gives us an opportunity to do proactive Department of Labor compliance record keeping. Typically there are questions that come up that will allow us to answer those types of questions, or we'll have some requests for all of you. And what it is that we may need from you for record keeping, but even the webinar in and of itself becomes a record of what it is that we've done for this grant. And it also provides all of us the best opportunities for the apprentices' success. So when we talk about selection for your apprentices, you really need to go back to utilizing your standards of apprenticeship. So make sure that you know what is on the standards of apprenticeship and be sure to follow it. Always understand that modifications are allowable, but they must be submitted to the state. If you need a modification that has to do with the group-sponsored model, I had a very informing conversation with the Ohio State Apprenticeship Council, and they were very helpful in explaining to me how modifications can be made to the group-sponsored model. We have a similar relationship that's very good with the state of Pennsylvania, so if we need to do in either one of the states, modifications can be made to standards of apprenticeship. Just be sure that when you look at your selection process, you use that standards of apprenticeship and you follow it, because the documentation has to show that you're actually following your standards of apprenticeship when you're doing your apprenticeship selection. And as I mentioned, they do allow for modifications even within our MVMC group-sponsored model. Modifications can be made if necessary. And in fact, and I'll go over this in just a couple minutes, we are going to have a modification that deals with apprenticeship selection for our group-sponsored model. So when I say utilize the standards of apprenticeship and make sure that you follow what's on it, my question for you would be, what is the process according to the standards? Do you know what it is? Do you know how to find it? And as I said, modifications are allowable, they can be submitted, and that we will be doing that. So, for example, the group sponsor model that we utilize when we talk about machining, I'm going to pull this up for you so you can see it. So in your standards of apprenticeship, you will have a section, whether using group sponsor model or your own, that talks about how you go about making sure that an applicant qualifies for your apprenticeship program, and then the selection procedure that you're going to utilize. So you can see on the screen here, I put up one from the group sponsor model. I believe this is for machinists. So the selection process itself, it's fairly simple. It talks about applicants obtaining an apprenticeship application at industryneedyou.com. We're going to be modifying that so that it says that that application can also be given to an applicant through their employer. We just have to make sure that we put that verbiage in there because we know that that's what many of you are doing. So we want to make sure that we're following our standards of apprenticeship, so that modification will be coming up pretty quickly. It then goes through the process and talks about how you submit that application and making sure that they meet the minimum qualifications, and that then there's information provided to the apprenticeship on participating in the program. And again, this would be whether it's our group sponsor model or whether you're utilizing your own apprenticeship program. You just have to make sure that you follow what it is that you've put in your standards of apprenticeship. Then it talks about the employer nominating the applicant to sponsor, and that they'll sign those agreements, and that's all the paperwork that our team goes through with all of you when you're ready to bring an apprentice on. So the process itself in choosing your apprentice can be basically whatever you think is going to work best for you, as long as you have that documented in your standards of apprenticeship. And the other thing to consider is that, of course, if you are, you do have collective bargaining unit, you'll want to make sure that you go through that with your union. And we do have a number of companies that are participating that do have unions. So that was on pages 4 of Ohio and 5 of Pennsylvania for those models of the group sponsored for the selection process. One of the things that came out in one of our previous webinars was that assessments are utilized by some of you to choose your apprentices. And when we asked you what topics you would like for a webinar, this came out again as one of the top topics for our webinars. So what I've been able to find out working through some of the related technical instruction education providers was that these are the types of tests that are typically used. Typically, an employer will use the TABE test with the math computations and applied math as part of their assessment for choosing their candidates for apprenticeship, and that a number of them also have utilized the Van Jit Pearson, which has a mechanical concept booklet with assessments that include mechanical interrelationships, spatial relations, and tools. But I've also learned that Pearson is no longer going to make that test, so employers may just need to figure out what they want to use as a replacement test. So I would recommend that you get online, and I will take you to a couple of the sites, but if you get online and you're able to get some samples of what it is you may want to utilize, you can look at those. Typically, they'll give you some sample pages or some sample questions for you to look at to decide what it is that you want to use. But these were the ones that were used most often when I was asking the RTI providers what they hear about as far as employers utilizing assessments. Also utilizing assessments such as Pearson Assembly, dexterity, and I can tell you that I know for sure that the Career and Tech Centers all have dexterity labs because it's part of their secondary curriculum, especially for the students that have special needs. So I know that there have been companies that have utilized some of those dexterity tests. So there are labs within the Career and Tech Centers that can help you with that if that's something you're interested in. There are also assessments for electrical, mechanical, and even 3D sketch tests. So depending on what your needs are and documenting what you think is going to be best in being able to help you choose your candidate, you'll want to then get with the RTI providers to see if they can help you with that testing and or go online and see what is available for you to utilize. I know that some employers like to utilize the RTI providers because of the neutrality of that as opposed to doing it in-house and having somebody do it. It just depends on what their preference is. This is something that was pulled. One of the RTI providers shared this with me, that this is what they utilize for their industrial maintenance apprentice testing. And so these are some of the tests that they utilize. And I think if this works correctly, I should be able to go to this, the website so that you can see some of these. There we go. Let's see if I can pull this up. There we go. So this is a description of the mechanical concepts that you can see, and this is what I was pointing out earlier. It's no longer available for purchase, but I would not be surprised if some of our RTI providers might have something you can look at as a sample. And the RTI provider, I say this with a little bit of hesitation, the RTI providers, if you wanted to customize and make your own assessments, they could do that with you. My only caution is to make sure that whatever it is that you develop, you really need to make sure that it's both valid and reliable. Not that you would be only using this maybe to choose your apprentices, but you just want to be careful that you make sure that whatever it is that you're using as an assessment relates to what the jobs are, especially if you're creating your own. So there are different sites you can get on, but they will typically explain to you what the different types of tests are, and they'll typically then give you prices and that kind of thing as well. So I wanted you to be able to see that. Another one would be the Flanagan Aptitude. So I'll give you the website on this so that you can just get a look at what some of these look like. And they're all pretty friendly to utilize. So there's a description, and you can see there, they give you a nice opportunity to see what all the different topics are that can be covered. And so you can get a feel for how they defined each one of those areas and if you think that would be useful for you for your assessment. And Bennett Mechanical, I know this is one that's been used for a number of years. When they talk about having different forms, I know in this case, those forms are basically the same. It's just that it gives you an opportunity to have two different ones, especially helpful if you have a lot of people in the room and you want to make sure that you can make the test every other person as they're sitting and that kind of thing. So, but this is the Bennett Mechanical, and it talks about the things that they cover and its reliability and that kind of thing. So just another consideration. And then, of course, the TABE, that's the one that most of you are probably most familiar with. This is your test for adult basic education. And it's typically used for those who are either remediating or are interested in getting their general high school diploma. But really what it does show you is it shows you what grade level the person who's being tested is at. So for example, if a person gets a score of 7.5 in math, that means that they're at the 7th year, 7th grade, 5 months in. So they're typically pretty easy to understand, and our ABLE partners, now called Aspire, are able to proctor those for you. But I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the things that are out there, because I know that there was some interest in that when we had talked about it before. But if you just get online, there are plenty of tests out there. You just need to figure out what's going to be best for you being able to choose your candidates for your apprenticeship program. So my question for you is, what process is it that you're using to choose your candidates, and do you use assessments? If so, which ones do you use? So would any of you like to share with us how it is that you're choosing your apprentices?
This is Mary Gray from Butech Bliss. We use, well, NTMA is the online RI provider that we use for some of our students or apprentices, and they do offer a mechanical aptitude test that, so we utilize that for both machinists and machine assemblers as part of our selection process.
This is Ed Lurch. We also use NTMA for
Yes.
their aptitude testing.
It's worked out well for us.
Correct.
Thank you. That was my follow-up question. Oh, I'm sorry, Melissa, just for a sec. I just wanted to ask Ed and Mary, do you find that it's made a difference in the retention of your apprentices?
I think more, this is Ed, sorry. I think more than anything, it just solidifies our choices as we kind of move towards hiring. It gives us a better foundation for kind of what we see, but it backs it up with their assessment testing, if that makes sense.
Right, and this is Mary again. We don't hire apprentices in. We only put current employees into the apprenticeship program, and but we always a lot of times have a certain number that we're going to put in, so it helps us choose which ones are best suited. As far as retention, I don't know. I would hesitate to say yes.
Thanks, Mary and Ed. Melissa, you have something to ask?
So I was going to say we use the CAPS test. It's the producer's Edits is the name of the company for that test, and we use just a portion of it. It's an aptitude test, so we use the mechanical reasoning, the spatial reasoning, communication, the dexterity portion of it. So we take a few portions from that test, but we use it only as part of the selection. So it has even weight with the supervisor review and the committee review, simply because some folks are not as good with test taking as others, or if you're using from your current workforce, they maybe haven't been in school for a while, so the idea of even taking the test is a little bit beyond what they want to do, or a little bit unsettling for them. So we give it even weight with, so I think, to what others have said, it's in combination with, and sometimes it reaffirms what we observe, but it's not our sole selection procedure. And I don't, like I said, I don't think, I would have to agree with you. I don't think it's testing the behaviors and traits that affect retention, so I don't think I could really link it to retention.
Thanks, Melissa. Those are good points. And I appreciate you talking about how it's not, the assessments aren't the sole thing that are utilized in making the selection, because that gets back to my point about if you decide that you're going to create your own assessments, that's possible to do, but you just want to protect yourself by making sure that it's not the only thing that you use in choosing your candidate.
This is Mary again at Butech.
Yeah, hi, Mary.
Yeah, I'm sorry to chime in here, but yes, the test scores from NTMA that we use, the most they can get is 30 points out of 100. We have the test score that they can get up to 30, and then we go by their education that anything that they've taken up till now, and that's a possible 20. Then their related work experience here, and then we do an interview, which is the same for everybody, and it's documented. So each thing is weighted a little differently, but it all blends into the end result of the selection.
Thanks, Mary. Anybody else have anything to contribute?
So we're in the same boat at Brilex, where we're only bringing from existing employee base. So I guess our process is more pre-apprenticeships are coming in, or just general hiring of folks that are in tech schools, and then it's just our normal interview process, not using any of the programs shared today, or a filtration process, or a process used to pick who's going to be an apprentice. Their general interview process. We spend some time here, and if we feel like they're a fit from that point, then that's the direction we go with.
Brian, can you spend a couple minutes just telling us a little bit about the pre-apprenticeship program and how you're utilizing that?
It's a pretty broad question. Can you narrow that down a hair?
Oh, I was just wondering, so the pre-apprenticeship program, where are you getting your pre-apprentices from, and what type of things are you doing the pre-apprenticeship training with them, or are they coming in with some of those skills already?
So I would say most of mine just comes from time spent in the career tech centers, getting to know the teachers and the teachers recommending students, as well as every now and then Jessica or Sue will send out a list of students that are recommended from career tech centers that we'll set up interviews with. I'd say that's been ongoing now for roughly 2 to 3 years. And then, those students, those that at least show some interest in wanting to work and getting into manufacturing and what we do in manufacturing, go through an interview process no different than anybody else. And if it works out, that's great. If not, I still think it's a valuable lesson for them just to learn how to interview. If they get in, usually they'll start off as, I hate to say it, but a floor sweeper or a laborer, just general, very limited work, and we'll kind of just test out their longevity skills right out the gate. And, I'm a firm believer of give somebody a horrible job for a week and you'll test and find out if they want to stick around or not. And if they can get through that week of sweeping the floor or painting the wall or whatever it is, and they're still showing interest in wanting to learn their skilled trade, then, we ramp up the efforts in doing that. And if they continue to show interest and progression, that's the point at which maybe we would then switch over to talking about putting them into one of the apprenticeship programs. So, we had 7 apprentices going at one point. We're down to 5, but not all 7, 6 of the 7 kind of started off through that path at some point in their career at Brilex.
Thanks, Ryan. Does anybody have anything else to share? Does anybody have any general questions about assessments or choosing candidates? Well, our topics for next time, based on the survey results that we got from all of you, is Partners for Success. That one will be August 13th. It is the last one that's scheduled. We will talk about the apprenticeship network, state apprenticeship offices, Workforce Development Board, education providers, internal resources, and employer champions. So if that's something that interests you, make sure that you're on the webinar on August 13th. Before I close out, I did want to remind you that this is being recorded, and therefore this webinar will be available on the Industry Needs You website fairly quickly, hopefully by the end of the week. But if you have any questions or you want information from one another, or we can share who was on the line, that type of thing. So just let us know and we'll get the information to you. So thank you very much and have a great day, and I'll give you 35 minutes back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.